Well, hello everyone. Tonight just seems to be cursed for me. All kinds of technical trouble. And yeah, last I was doing a stream earlier today and it just died midstream because who knows. It was the aftermarket plug decided it didn't want to charge. So that is apparently going to go in the garbage. And I'm trying to pull up comments here to make sure I can see them. And hopefully that will not happen again. And it's giving me an error loading comments, so I'll have just to watch them on Restream. So hopefully this will work out well and it doesn't make me too discombobulated. What we are going to be going through tonight, again, this is part 3. The setting was the 1972 National Convention, the birth of the party, the initial platform, and all of that. But we had said this time we wanted to delve more deeply into the statement of principles. I cannot stress to you. Oh, thank you. Thank you, James. My Ron Paul Revolution shirt. I cannot stress to you how critical the statement of principles is. And hopefully I will do it justice. If you just can't get enough of the statement of principles, I probably have 10 other shows on this topic. I've traveled, I don't know, to probably about 10 state conventions giving presentations on the statement of principles. But without further ado, let's get into it. I would like that the conversation be driven perhaps by questions or comments that people may have if they have any. This is kind of my wheelhouse. This is my passion. Statement of principles is basically like what I live for. So let's go to some of the introductory documents that I have for you. Okay. Now, before we get to that, what I have up here on the screen, you can find the original of this on Lpedia. D. Frank Robinson is one of the party founders. I have a printed copy here, so I don't have to keep looking over at my screen. And he had written out, per request, some memoirs as to what actually happened in 1972, because unfortunately we didn't capture a lot of the memories of the people that were there, and unfortunately there's quite a bit of them that are no longer with us. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can do that. I can give you a link. Hopefully I'll remember to put it in the show notes, but probably not. I always forget. And he tells his story about how he got involved. And you can see here that he first learned about the formation of the Libertarian Party by an ad that was in Reason magazine. We've looked at those ads, and that is what brought D. Frank into the party. He's still around on Facebook and stuff, so yeah, you can interact with him. And you can see on towards the end of this page here where he formed the Libertarian Party of Oklahoma in 1972, and he was asked to chair the Bylaws and Constitution Committee for the founding convention, which ended up being in June of that same year. So let's just go over to the next page here where he tells the story about some of his ideas. And let's see here. What his concern was is that they were starting off as a bunch of idealists, and that, like most other things, it would turn into something really different than what they had intended. And I would really encourage you to read through here. There is something we're going to get to next which is more on point, but I wanted to let you know of the existence of this. He starts talking about what happened in 1980 with, the Libertarian presidential candidacy of Ed Clark, and just going through the early party and his passion eventually landing on ballot access. So I will try to remember to put a link to this, but if not, you can go to Lpedia and search for, let me put back up the title of this and read it. That Mickey, me, and the LP. And there's a character in the story named Mickey. That's where that comes from. But what I really wanted to get to is this next document, which is short, and we will read it in full, because this will give the foundation for the rest of our discussion tonight. And let me hide this one. Oh, I need to unlock this scene. 1 second. Hide that. Here we go. In 2017, at my request, I think it was at my request, or the edit was at my request. I don't know. I was involved in this somehow. D. Frank wrote down his memoir about the Statement of Principles. And I am going to read this to you. This is very, very important. It's the words of the founder, one of the founders, about our founding principles, actually. So, D. Frank says, when I came to David Nolan and the Libertarian Party, I was a disgusted Republican under the influence of Ayn Rand's philosophy, and I had become suspicious and then disgusted by Nixon. At the Denver LP convention in 1972, I was puzzled by various controversies surrounding the attempts to agree on a platform manifesto. I had observed in my days in the Republican Party platform battles that the controversies were usually about who had the most personal influence rather than what meaning an outsider would take from the official dogma in a platform. Partisans of personality seldom cared what the final document stated anyway. Who won and who lost was all that mattered in setting the pecking order. All political parties are personality cults who create ideological murkiness with blatant contradictions. I did not like that. This made me determined to devise a barricade to personality cults using the LP for their tugs of war to dismantle it. So I, with Ed Carlson of New Mexico, devised embedding an article of faith, statement of principles, that could not be altered without a supermajority. I was aware that this was not good form in parliamentary practice. Organization unity and longevity by hook or by crook is good form, else an organization might split into seceding factions and wither away. Nevertheless, I took the contrary view, that factionalization and hair-splitting acrimony also sprang from ambiguity and transient charismatics in organizations. Just look at the U.S. constitutional history. Shrewd manipulators could use these tactics to concentrate power in a clique, like a Tammany Hall crowd. So Ed and I persuaded Dave and the founding convention delegates to plant a rhetorical stake in the ground with a tether. The Statement of Principles, a terse, one-page document declaring to all coming after us, this is the anchor and the lifeline. Do not tread too far from it, or you may perish. If you stay close, you may eventually prosper for your efforts. In the succeeding years, I have seen LP platforms evolve and morph and dance and sing. But the rhetorical force of gravity in the SOP has kept the centrifugal force, the centrifugal personality, that word, I suck at it, personality cults at bay. They haven't made the LP into a Republican light, nor has the LP flown apart yet. The credit for this, in my view, belongs to all those delegates over the years who have looked at all new platform phraseologies. Let's go to the next page here. I don't have my cursor in the right place. I think this might work. There we go. And then compared them to the statement of principles. You just can't fool these folks with a flim and a flam and a damn and a jam and say he's our man. The SOP gives the delegates a little more incentive to think a little more carefully. A modicum of clarity makes it tough to fool 7/8 of convention of libertarians again and again and again. Scrap a platform and start over? Sure. Stand pat on the last one? Sure. Take the whole tribe on the warpath? If 1/8 of the powwow says no, that is the end of fortune and glory. If you have reached this line, thank you for your patience. Continue on your own. Now, to me, that is a powerful testimony that says the purpose. We all see the personality cults, don't we? We see how people want to use the party for their own vehicles, and it's all about who wins and who loses and the personalities. But for the statement of principles, this party would not be here today. Or if it was, it would be a name only and nothing like what it was founded. And we will go through some of the attempts to subvert the statement of principles. And that's where we're going to get into an outline that I had used at some conventions. We won't be using all of it, but we'll be using enough of it. So let me get past the little intro here. Okay. Actually, before we get to that, let's just leave that. Let me just go here. Let's just leave it there for a second, because I want to give an intro. You'll often hear that the libertarianism can't be defined. Don't give me the one true libertarian nonsense, right? And I, to a point, agree with that. I don't get into those battles. But one battle I will engage in, and I'll prove to you why we should all, is if someone says to you, not just libertarianism, small l, but Libertarian Party libertarianism can't be defined. It's just, whatever. They are either ignorant or lying to you. Because Libertarian Party libertarianism absolutely can be defined. It is defined by the statement of principles. We often hear talk about how we have to have a big tent. And that I agree with if it's interpreted properly. What most people mean by that is that we got to be really loosey-goosey about what we believe. Because again, right, you can't define libertarianism. A big tent is not about a big tent of ideas. It's about a big tent of people who may agree with some ideas and disagree with some ideas. But just because someone agrees with some libertarian ideas, and therefore they're welcome in our party, does not sanitize their unlibertarian ideas. The big tent is open to all, but not all ideas are part of the big tent. Otherwise, it's then the big top, a circus. The tent of ideological libertarianism in the Libertarian Party has boundaries. And those boundaries are the statement of principles. Don't let anyone bullshit you about that. And I will prove it. You don't have to take my word for it. Now, when I first joined the party, I joined the party because of two parts of our ideology. I opened the lp.org one day. There's a whole reason why I did that. And I went to the platform. And I read the preamble and I read the statement of principles. That's all I read. The next browser tab I opened up was the Colorado Secretary of State, and I switched my voter registration on the spot because those two, the preamble and the statement of principles, they sang to my soul. And because that is what, quote unquote, converted me. I didn't know any libertarians. No libertarian converted me. While somebody said they liked my shirt, and while I am a fan of Ron Paul today, I didn't know anything about Ron Paul when I became a libertarian. Ron Paul did not bring me to libertarianism. The statement of principles brought me to libertarianism. No human being was involved. Because of that, it's held a very dear place in my heart. And I am at heart a historian. In every group I've ever become involved with, I get into the history. So I started to become curious about this thing that spoke so much to me. And as I started investigating, where did this come from? Who wrote this? What's this about? It led me on a very, very long journey, a journey that really is an unbroken line to me, having the custodianship of the party records because of the passion for the statement of principles. And I told you the story last time about how the original came into my possession and how I do feel that was a bit of fate and kismet, whether you guys want to buy the woo or not. I felt like it was waiting for me to come home because I doubt there's probably people who love it equally with me, but I don't think there's anyone in this party that loves the statement of principles more than I do. And I've proven it, and we'll get into that as well. So as I began to dig into the history, I found that there was a lot of mythology and actual falsehoods surrounding the statement of principles and where it came from and what its purposes is. Some of it was just due to carelessness. You know, it was a long time ago. We hadn't been very studious about keeping our history. But unfortunately, some of it was downright malicious attempts to bury the radical nature of this party. Because, what did D. Frank talk about? The cults of personality and agendas. They couldn't delete it, but they could bury it. And that was going on, and it's still going on today. But it's going on less because I will expose it. And I travel anywhere that will invite me to speak, to give my formal presentation on the statement of principles. So let's start to go through a little bit of what I found. And it really was like peeling back the mists of history. We're going back 50 years. There's also another little bit of background I need to give you. I'm a paralegal, as most of you know. For the first decade or so of my career, I assisted in fraud cases. And insurance fraud cases, working for the insurance companies to uncover fraud. And when you're working on fraud cases, people will tell you a lot of shit. One person will tell you this, one person will tell you that. People lie. Documents don't lie. You might misinterpret documents, but they don't lie. So there's a lot of what I call forensic document examination when you're doing fraud investigations. And as I started to ask people about the statement of principles, I got some conflicting stories, though a certain coherent narrative was starting to come forward. But how could I determine what was the truth? You go back to the documents. You go back to the record. The record doesn't lie. And that's what we're going to do a little bit of. And even though this isn't like the full presentation I give at conventions, there's always someone who gets a fire lit under their ass by this, and they carry the torch too. And I hope that's somebody who watches or listens to this. So let's continue now. Okay, that's just about me. And I don't know what that was. What was that? I'm missing something there. And that bothers me because I am missing a page there. It probably is not terribly critical. Okay, what we have up on the screen here is the 1972 bylaws, I believe. Let me see here. Yeah, it is. Just want you could tell by some of the language in there. So, here's Article 8 of the original bylaws. You can tell it's typewritten, which is to me so cool. And it says Section 1, the party shall adopt a platform at its first regular convention in June 1972. Said platform shall include, but not be limited to, a statement of principles and the implementation of principles contained in the statement in the form of planks. Section 2. This is where I got the title of my talk, which you may have noticed was entitled The Statement of Principles, Through Which Liberty Shall Prevail. Here's where I got that from. Section 2. The statement of principles of the platform affirms that philosophy upon which the Libertarian Party is founded, by which it shall be sustained, and through which liberty shall prevail. The enduring importance of the statement of principles requires that it shall not be amended by a vote of less than 7/8 of the delegates at a regular convention, except that at the 1974 regular convention only, this statement of principles may be amended by a vote of 2/3 of the delegates. So what's going on here with all that language? Particularly that last paragraph. Well, before that, let's do this second paragraph. Anyone who tells you, once again, that Libertarian Party libertarianism cannot be defined does not know our bylaws, because it says it right there. The statement of principles is the philosophy upon which it is founded. That's Libertarian Party libertarianism. Don't let people flim-flam you. But let's get to that third paragraph there. And I'm noticing something here. Every time I do this, I notice something new. So what happened is they wanted to protect the statement of principles. And to show how important it was, they set a very, very high amendment threshold. Basically, an impossible amendment threshold. The joke I like to tell is, if you ever watch Dumb and Dumber, when Jim Carrey was going after that really pretty girl, and he asked her, would you ever date me? And she basically said, yeah, there's a 1 in a million chance. And he was like, yes, I have a chance. A 1 in a million chance isn't a chance. Getting 7/8 isn't really possible either. But the 1972 delegates realized what they were doing was very serious. They were basically, creating a vault and then swallowing the key to make it impregnable. And they wanted to make sure that they weren't just caught up in the excitement of this new party. So they gave themselves a 2-year cooling off period until the 1974 convention before that 7/8 requirement got locked in. That didn't go into effect until the 74 convention. At the 74 convention alone, the statement of principles could be amended by a vote of 2/3, which is typical amendments for bylaws and for our platform. So what did they do in 74 with this radical document? Did they, and before we get there, I think it would be nice, because you guys are familiar with the 1974 Statement of Principles. And it did change slightly. So what I would like to do, I'm going to pull up Elpedia here. on a different screen. And I would like to read the 1972 Statement of Principles, because I think some of the differences you will find striking, and they will become very important as we continue here. Okay, National Platform, 1972. Okay, Statement of Principles. Let me find it. Okay, here's the 1972. This was adopted unanimously, which probably is a first and a last Libertarian Convention history. You'll notice a lot of it stayed the same, but listen closely to what's different. I'd be really interested if you catch it. We, the members of the Libertarian Party, challenge the cult of the omnipotent state and defend the rights of the individual. We hold that each individual has the right to exercise sole dominion over his own life, and has the right to live his life in whatever manner he chooses, so long as he does not forcibly interfere with the equal right of others to live their lives in whatever manner they choose. Governments throughout history have regularly operated on the opposite principle, that the state has the right to dispose of the lives of individuals and the fruits of their labor. Even within the United States, all political parties other than our own grant to government the right to regulate the life of the individual and seize the fruits of his labor without his consent. We, on the contrary, deny the right of any government to do these things and hold that the sole function of government is the protection of the rights of each individual, namely, 1, the right to life, and accordingly we support laws prohibiting the initiation of physical force against others. 2, the right to liberty of speech and action, and accordingly we oppose all attempts by government to abridge the freedom of speech and press, as well as government censorship in any form. And 3, the right to property, and accordingly we oppose all government interference with private property, such as confiscation, nationalization, and eminent domain, and support laws which prohibit robbery, trespass, fraud, and misrepresentation. Since government has only one legitimate function, the protection of individual rights, we oppose all interference by government in the areas of voluntary and contractual relations among individuals. Men should not be forced to sacrifice their lives and property for the benefit of others. They should be left free by the government to deal with one another as free traders on a free market, and the resultant economic system, the only one compatible with the protection of man's rights, is laissez-faire capitalism. I'm curious, did anyone catch some of the striking differences in the 1972 Statement of Principles, as opposed to what we have today, which is the one which was passed in 1974? Most of it's the same, but there are some critical differences, and I don't see anyone saying that they caught them. Obviously, the beautiful first sentence of we, the members of the Libertarian Party, oppose the cult of the omnipotent state, that language. That stayed the same, and defend the rights of the individual. And I love that language. All the right people hate it. But some things did change, but we'll go over that. But I wanted you to hear it as it was. Most of us would have agreed, I think, with it as it was written in 1972, though I think the 1974 version is better. So let's continue. Here's what's interesting. Now this is, I think, our 2018 bylaws, but this hasn't changed. You'll notice something. I showed you the 1972 bylaws, and now I'm showing you the 2018 bylaws. What do you notice here? We're going to read it. Number 1, the Statement of Principles affirms that philosophy upon which the Libertarian Party is founded, by which it shall be sustained, and through which liberty shall prevail. The enduring importance of the Statement of Principles requires that it may be amended only by a vote of 7/8 of all registered delegates at a regular convention. 2, The party platform shall include, but not be limited to, the statement of principles and the implementation of those principles in the form of planks. Number 3, the current platform shall serve as the basis of all future platforms, so on and so forth. That part's not terribly important. But what do you notice here? The definition of Libertarian Party libertarianism is exactly the same as it was in 1972. The statement of principles affirms that philosophy, continuing, and so on and so forth, like I read. Nothing there has changed. Now, I'm trying to look up something else here because I just noticed something new. And I'm going to look it up. What article? I believe that was Article 8 we were looking at. So give me 1 second because I'm pulling up the 1974 bylaws. I'm going to have to track down this change. I don't have any bylaws. Thank you for bearing with me because I get fascinated when I notice something new. I don't have any sets of bylaws between 1974 and 1985, at least not in Elpedia. And something changed between 1974 and 1985, and I'll tell you what it is. You guys got to discover something with me. Let's go back to the 1972 platform. You notice something here. It says, let me find it. Statement of Principles requires that it shall not be amended by a vote of less than 7/8 of the delegates at a regular convention. Okay, well enough. But look at the 2018 bylaws. The Statement of Principles requires that it may be amended only by a vote of 7/8 of all registered delegates at a national convention. Did you catch the difference? In 1972 and also in 1974, it just said a vote of 7/8 of delegates. In 2018, and I tracked it down between 1974 and 1985, this changed. It says 7/8 of all registered delegates. There's a big difference between those two. A 7/8 vote of delegates means 7/8 of those voting, just like a majority vote or a 2/3 vote. But a 7/8 vote of all registered delegates means everyone who is registered, whether they're in the room or not, whether they're voting or not. Those of you who have been to a convention know that there are never 7/8 of all registered delegates, even on the floor at any one time. Which means this bylaw is basically telling people, you want to amend the Statement of Principles? Too bad, so sad. Go start your own party. Because it's functionally impossible. You think you could ever get 7/8 vote of registered delegates on the floor? I've got a bridge to sell you. And you probably believe that Republicans really want to cut government too. Next page. Now we went back to the 72 bylaws. There were some functions, some safeguards that the Statement of Principles served. In Article 12, you see the Judicial Committee had certain functions in 1972. And one of those, if you go down to Section 2 there, was challenges of adopted party planks believed by, and then it was just a delegate. I think now it requires 10% of delegates at convention. Plank believed by a delegate to be in conflict with the Statement of Principles shall be referred in writing during the convention to the Judicial Committee. So, if somebody tried to pass some very anti-libertarian plank, it could be overruled by showing that it conflicted with the Statement of Principles. The Statement of Principles is the ultimate judge of the platform. And here is the 2018 bylaws. Yeah, and I was correct. It's now 10% rather than just one delegate. Challenges of adopted party planks believed by 10% of the delegates to be in conflict shall be referred in writing during the convention to the Judicial Committee. But also, you'll note in 2018, the Statement of Principles also rules over resolutions. If you look at Part 2 of Rule 6, resolutions must not be in conflict with the Statement of Principles. Let's continue. We went back here to the 72 bylaws, Charter of Affiliate Parties. No organization shall be chartered which does not ratify the Statement of Principles of the party. There are very few requirements to be chartered as a state affiliate. One of them is the state affiliate must ratify the Statement of Principles. No state affiliate can contradict the Statement of Principles. That is a disaffiliable, it's grounds for disaffiliation, let's put it that way. Okay, that thing is also in the current bylaws. I think somehow that page got deleted from here. You can look it up. It's the same requirements. Those have never changed. So, what's interesting is that 1972 bylaw was written before they had even written the Statement of Principles. Okay, so bring ourselves back to the 72 convention. The platform committee was charged with writing a Statement of Principles, and this is what they came up with. It is quite clinical. There's a joke I like to, it's not one I wrote, but I loved it. It says, "What does a horse created by committee look like?" And the answer is a camel. Things written by committee read about as scintillating as a Xerox instruction manual. So let's read what the platform committee thought our Statement of Principles should be. We, the supporters of the Libertarian Party, rise to challenge the myth that government has the right to exist and act independently of its role as an agent for the protection of the individual rights of each citizen. Oh my God. Compare that. I mean, seriously, compare that to the beauty of what it is now. Let me go back to that page. 1 second here. Whoop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doo. Compare that first sentence to "We, the members of the Libertarian Party, challenge the cult of the omnipotent state and defend the rights of the individual." One is poetry. One is corporate speak. I'm so glad we did not adopt this. So we're not going to read the whole thing, but yeah. And the delegates agreed. The delegates thought they liked the thoughts. Hey, Julian. But they did not like the way it was written. It was but ugly, let's face it. So they asked delegates on the floor to submit their proposals for the Statement of Principles. These nobody knew, as far as I know, until I transcribed them from the 1972 convention tapes that were given to me by D. Frank Robinson. They were in his basement for all those years. You'll note that because the quality of tape was so bad, there are missing sections where I had to type in inaudible. But let's go through some of these so you can see what could have been our Statement of Principles. Oh my God, that's too small. I don't think I can make it bigger. Well, what I'm going to do is read it off my screen. Maybe to you guys it's big enough, but here it looks awful tiny. But you can see how long it is. It's like, Lord have mercy. I'm so glad we did not do that. So let me pull this up on my screen here. so I can read it. Okay, this was a submission by someone by the name of Bill Cohen. And we're just going to read the first paragraph again so you can get an idea of how John Galt it is. That's all I can say. Man finds himself living among men, either as a free man or a slave, depending upon the ideas which men hold concerning men's nature and his proper relationship to other men, and the institutions men have established. Either the individual possesses the right to own his own life, or he exists by permission, his life justified by the benefits that others derive from the use and disposal of his life and property. Oh my fucking God. Holy run-on sentence. The rest of it is equally John Galt. Oh my God. Okay, let's just go to the next one. This makes me sad. This is shorter. It looks a little better. This is from Mark Fraser. We, the members of the Libertarian Party, aware that government at all levels has grown abusive and that political parties have refused to respect basic moral principles, are determined to offer simple and fundamental change. That's not as bad, but it's not as beautiful as we, the members of the Libertarian Party, challenge the cult of the omnipotent state and defend the rights of the individual. So, where's another one that was offered? Here's the one from John Hospers, which is the one they ended up adopting. So we can skip that. I read it. Here's one from Bill D. Sussel. We, the supporters of the Libertarian Party, rise to challenge the myth of the omnipotent collective, to assert and defend the sovereignty of the individual. It says the same thing, doesn't it, as John Hospers in meaning, but how less beautiful is it? And check out this last paragraph. They sure love long sentences. Check this out. Rooted in the philosophies of reason, proclaiming the sanctity of individual rights, we do explicitly and proudly affirm our dedication to fight the battle for capitalism, to wage the ideological war that must be fought if liberty is to survive, to achieve that society in which all men are free to seek their chosen goals. The enumeration of the positions herein shall not be taken to disparage other positions which libertarians may share. That was one sentence, folks. But notice something there, lib sucks. Capitalism? Don't tell me the party wasn't founded on capitalism. Don't lie, Pinocchio. From Diane Amsden, the first chair of the Libertarian Party of New Mexico. Hardcore Ayn Randian. A lot of inaudibles in hers. But you can see how very Ayn Randian it is. We, the members of the Libertarian Party, rise to proclaim that man's life is an end in itself and that the purpose of a man's life is his own happiness. Very Ayn Rand. Okay. So they ended up adopting, thank God, the John Hospers. And I think we should all be very grateful they did. Because some of these, man, whew. So, here is a very poor copy. This is the Xerox copy I told you I had before we got our hands on the original. But it's a copy of what John Hospers read. And you can see there's even little notes on there. But we're going to go past that because we actually have a much prettier version. And this is it. This is the original that I received in the mail from that eBay auction from Lelius Rose in Washington, who donated it to the party. You check out the coffee stain. I found someone who was present when that coffee stain was made. It is one of the students of John Hospers. And they say that John Hospers actually made that coffee stain. June 1972. So that is hanging now, framed at the headquarters. That's the one that came home to Mama. Okay, I read this earlier. This is the 1972 Statement of Principles. This is what they eventually passed unanimously. And you can see there's even a little superscription there. Adopted unanimously by the delegates to the First National Convention of the Libertarian Party on June 17, 1972. Now, I believe the next screen is the 1974 Statement of Principles. Why the difference? Remember, probably about 20 minutes ago, where I told you that they gave themselves an escape hatch, that they could amend it by a 2/3 vote only in 1974. So what did they do? This is a pretty radical statement right here, particularly for the time. This was unknown. There was no political party like this. I think we've become jaded. We're so used to these ideas that we don't realize how shocking they are to a normie, right? So what did they do? Did they tone it down? Did they make it more palatable to, even though these didn't exist then, it's the example I like to use now, soccer moms in Peoria who were not supposed to be scaring? No, they didn't. What did they do? They made it more radical. They said that wasn't good enough. So let's go to the 1974 Statement of Principles. It might not be immediately obvious to you, and I'm not going to read it all out loud because we're going to go over just what the changes were. But this brings in another pivotal event in party history. Some of you may never have heard of this. Others of you who have heard of this have probably heard a lie about it. Lie implies intentionality, and I do think some people do intentionally lie, but I think most people just don't know, so they inadvertently give a falsehood. In 1974, there was an event that has come to be known as the Dallas Accord. I'd be very interested in chat who knows what the Dallas Accord is, or if you have ever heard of it. One second, I want to take a drink, and if anyone wants to type in something. If you have heard of it, perhaps maybe even you read about it on Wikipedia. Let me tell you, the Wikipedia article on it sucks ass and is wrong. And when I attempted to change it, this is why I refuse to participate at Wikipedia anymore. When I attempted to change it, they didn't let me because, this is going to sound so stupid, because I was the historian doing the work on the Statement of Principles, therefore I knew too much. Like this, I was the source, but I was the only person doing the work. So the only quote-unquote expert on it at the time was disallowed from editing the article at Wikipedia, despite the fact that I disclosed all of my conflicts of interest. They can kiss my ass. If you want to read a good article on the Statement of Principles, read the one that's at Lpedia. It's right. And those of you who are my friends in the Mises Caucus, go to the article on the Dallas Accord at Wikipedia and go look at the edit history, and you'll see one of your favorite people was the one who was in an edit war with me over there. Just do that. You'll laugh. I'm not going to mention names here. So, I'm not sure what's on the next page. I didn't finish. I got unnecessarily distracted. So what is the Dallas Accord? The Dallas Accord was an agreement reached at the 1974 convention between party menarchists and party anarchists that the party itself would take no ultimate position on whether or not Libertopia would include a government or not. To put that more simply, the party is agnostic as to whether or not our end goal includes a state. That doesn't mean we can't make statements dealing with government as we have it now, because it does exist, even if we don't want it to. It also doesn't mean that no individual libertarian can take a position. That was the whole point, that individual libertarians took different positions. So the party itself is agnostic. That is the official position of the party. So when you see the assholes out there telling you that anarchists aren't big L libertarians, tell them to get bent. And when you see asshole anarchists telling minarchists that they don't belong in the party, tell them to go sit on a cactus. Because both of those are false. The party is agnostic on whether or not Libertopia, the end goal, includes a state. Now, here's where the legends and falsehoods come in. You may hear that this was an informal agreement in 1974, and while it is an interesting relic of history, it is not binding upon us today. That it was merely a gentleman's agreement amongst the delegates of 1974, and it was only binding upon them. That is what I was told, and that is what I believed. Until I, as I said, did the forensic document examination, because the documents do not lie. So a lot of people like to say, well, then show me the Dallas Accord. If it's binding upon us today, show it to me. Okay, I will. That should shock some of you who've heard the legend on how the Dallas Accord was never in writing and nobody could show it to you, and that it was an informal agreement. I just made a ballsy claim. I said I could show it to you. You want to see it? I think the next slide might do that. So let's see. One of the next ones will, but I think it's the next one. Yes. I would like to make this bigger. Let's see if I can. Looking for the edge of this. You know what? Let's start a new screen because I want to make this big. So, one second here. I'm going to pull up a new screen. Blank. Just give me one moment so I can pull up this document out of my folders here and make it bigger for you, because this is super critical. Okay, let me now page through to get to that page we were at. Up, back there. Okay, that's better. What is this that I am showing you? Well, it's something that I did. I wanted to understand what happened in 1974. I wanted to understand what changes they made. Some of them were really obvious, and most people knew about them. For instance, the really, to modern ears, statement of governments where they exist type language. But there were much more changes than that. And I went through, and I think I'm the first person to have done this. I might not have been, but as far as I know. And I also color coded them so that like blue cyanish color there is just grammar changes. Let's go through those. It used to say, we hold that each individual has the right, and now it just says we hold that all individuals. And then you see here, instead of life of the individual, it says lives of the individual. And instead of each individual, it says any individual. You see, it's stylistic, just grammar. The green ones. The green ones are gender neutrality and related changes. I know some people get really all upset about gender neutrality. Get over it. Back in 74, we were ahead of the curve here. You can see that the 72 Statement of Principles used to say his life. It now says their own lives. It used to say he chooses. It now says they choose. It used to say his consent. It now says their consent. You get the idea. Those really are not significant changes. Those are style. But the yellow changes, those were the significant changes. And here's my bold claim. You saw how difficult it was made to amend the Statement of Principles, 7A's. You also saw that the bylaws said the Statement of Principles is our philosophy. Everything is judged by the Statement of Principles. So what is the most serious thing you could ever do in this party? Amend the Statement of Principles. And they did in 74. And funny, the substantive changes they made were the changes that removed any requirement of minarchism from the Statement of Principles to allow for anarchism. This is the Dallas Accord, my friends. You can't get any more binding than that. Unless you want me to believe they had some informal agreement in a back room and they just happened to make the exact same changes to the Statement of Principles and those two weren't related at all. No libertarian is that stupid. It was formalized. You're looking at it. You're looking at the Dallas Accord. And if you think the Statement of Principles isn't binding upon all of us today, think again. So let's take a look at the glory of the Dallas Accord changes. All right. It used to say the sole function of government is the protection of, I believe it said individual rights or something to that extent. It now says, we, on the contrary, I'm going to read the whole sentence. We, on the contrary, deny the right of any government to do these things and hold that where governments exist. Notice that? Where governments exist, because they might not. They must not violate the rights of any individual. They also deleted everywhere it said laws, because laws implies a government. And they simply said we support the prohibition, because that can be done in an anarchy. It used to say, since governments have only one legitimate function, the protection of individual rights, it now says, since governments, when instituted, because they might not be, must not violate individual rights. And just as an aside, let's look at the purple changes, which I categorized as substantive other changes in terminology, arguable as to whether they were substantive. They removed the words on a free market and the words laissez-faire capitalism and just made it the free market. Some people hang their hats on that to say, see, they were repudiating capitalism. No, they were not, which is obvious when you look at the platform. But I have to guess why they did this. I believe they felt laissez-faire capitalism was just too hoity-toity of a way to word something, and that saying the free market was something that most people would understand and it was more elegant. By this point, they were separating from the objectivists. Ayn Rand hated the party, and she always used the words laissez-faire capitalism. I believe this was a way to snub Ayn Rand. Can't prove it, but I do think it passes the sniff test. So while people's recollections and their stories can lie or be mistaken, the document does not lie. And we see it right here what happened. And after they made these changes, the 7/8 lockdown went into place, and the Statement of Principles has not been changed since 1974. But there's something, when I first did this, I already was like, wow, that is so cool. But as I told you, each time I read this, I discover something new. About the third time I was examining this, I was like, whoa, it's actually even more decisive than I thought. I don't know if I have this on a slide. We do not. So I'm going to have to try to explain this without a slide, but I think you'll be able to follow. We all know, we should at least, and if you don't, maybe you're a new libertarian, you'll learn it, about the difference between positive and negative rights. There's a corollary about positive and negative functions. The original Statement of Principles in 72 assigned a positive role to the government. The government must protect rights. The government must do X, a positive role. 1974, they turned that on its head. There is no positive role for the government in the 1974 Statement of Principles. There's only a negative role for the government. The government must not do X. That is an important change. Let me show you an example. Down here, last paragraph. Since it used to say, since government has only one legitimate function, the protection of individual rights. That's what it said in 1972, a positive role. In 1974, it said, since governments, when instituted, must not violate individual rights. They went from having a duty to protect them to having an obligation not to violate them. Big difference. Same thing happened in the second to last paragraph. It used to say the sole function of government is the protection of individual rights, or rights, I think it just said. 74 says, and hold that where governments exist, they must not violate the rights of any individual. I hope that sinks in. That is super, super important. I'm going to stop here for a second to go through some comments. Thank you, Matthew. I'm having one issue with my program where it won't let me put it on the screen, so I will just read this out. The LP can be an effective weapon against the state. However, it has not been utilized properly, to say the least. I agree. And I went into, I don't remember what episode it was, but I really just started ranting on why I believe that is. And it's because we've been schizophrenic. We've been self-hating radicals. I don't mean capital R radicals. I'm not talking about a caucus. I'm talking about our ideas. And if we had just steered the course and not been what Mark Montoni calls wet bladder syndrome, which is libertarians who would rather piss their pants rather than say a truly libertarian thing, we could have changed the world by now. Don't get me going again. I could do that for hours. And Matthew also kindly said, that is starting to change, and it started with your election as secretary. Thank you for being you and keeping it real. Thank you, Matthew, for the very, very kind words. I appreciate it. It touches me deeply. So let me go back now to that prior where we were before I had to make that big. Okay, here we go. Now, I want to get you guys mad. Are you ready to get mad? Mad people get shit done. I told you that the statement of principles hasn't been changed since 1974. But that doesn't mean certain people haven't tried. Some of those people we know, Matthew, you would know some of the ones I'm talking about. So, check it out. Libertarian Party Presidential Nominating Convention 2008. That's when we nominated Bob Barr and Wayne Allen Root. Not our finest moment. You can see here, I put a ruling here, and I'm going to explain what this is. It says, after the question was called and the matter put to a vote, the chair's ruling was overturned, and the statement of principles item stood out of order. This was confirmed with a standing vote. So what happened here? I think I got some slides that relate to this, but if not, I'll explain it. So, in 2008, they tried to gut the statement of principles. They tried to remove all of the Dallas Accord language and delete the cult of the omnipotent state language, which embarrasses the hell out of certain people. But let me see here. Yeah, crap, it's not big. Let's go to where I can make this shit big again. You ready? Let's do it. I don't know why that's so small, but let's go to that other scene, because you guys got to see the shit that gets pulled in this party. Okay, let me move this forward. Okay, here we go. This was the proposal that got ruled out of order. Really pay attention here, because this is some rat fuckery. And I don't think I've ever used that term before in my life. But if anything is a rat fuck, this was a rat fuck. The Bylaws Committee, and it was 8-0. The Bylaws Committee recommended this proposal 8-0. The Platform Committee recommendation was unanimous, and the online survey was 93%. There was some shit going on with the online survey back then, but I'm just not even going to get into that. One thing you'll find out about the survey generally isn't very reflective of what will happen at convention. People just like approving things. Obviously, you can tell because this got shot down in flames. But here we go. Problem. Check this out. Check this shit out. The drafters of the early bylaws left a back door, either deliberately or accidentally, allowing the statement of principles to be amended by a series of 2/3 vote. You might be saying, what the hell? I read it. It said 7/8, right? And then they continue. The statement of principles contains some awkward and embarrassing language that nearly all libertarians would like to see. I don't know why it says deleted there. It was supposed to say deleted. The secretary made a typo. The straightforward approach to amending the statement of principles requires the affirmative vote of 7/8 of the registered delegates, which is impossible to achieve because 7/8 of the registered delegates are never on the convention floor at the same time. Notice that they admit what it says. Okay, so here's the solution. Bastards. In a single step, to preclude any risk of the process being hijacked midway through, open the back door, make the most critical and least controversial amendments to the statement of principles, and forever padlock the back door. And here's the alleged back door. To suspend the rules for the purpose of voting en banc for the adoption of the following 4 motions together, without secondary motions or incidental main motions, to take effect in the listed sequence, with debate limited to a total of 15 minutes for all questions and a 2/3 vote. Here we go. Motion number 1. Amend Bylaw Article 14, Section 2, as follows. Article 4, Section 1 shall not be amended, and it says, by a vote of less than 7/8 of all registered delegates. And they want to change that to 2/3. Then, in a second motion, go to that section about the 7/8 and change that to 2/3. Then, go and amend the statement of principles and delete challenge the cult of the omnipotent state and defend the rights of the individual, and delete deny the right of any government to do these things, and delete where keep the word government but take out the words exist. They left in one Dallas Accord change, so I was mistaken when I thought they were deleted also the when instituted, but they didn't. And then motion 4, go back to Bylaws Article 4, Section 1, and put back in the 7/8. And go back to Article 14, Section 2, and put in what's called a force field, which I will explain. But noted the convention ruled the above measure out of order. So, let me tell you what these folks wanted to do. So, in article, I think it doesn't matter, where it talked about the statement of principles, it says it shall not be amended. I think it was, let's get the numbers. It was Article 4. Okay, so Article 4 said the statement of principles can't be amended by less than 7/8 at convention. Then, in Article 14, Section 2, you want to know what? Let me, I'm going to pull something up here because it's kind of difficult to explain right here. One second here. Let me pull up the 2016 bylaws and put them on the screen, because I really need to show you what they tried to do. It was so freaking sneaky. 2016 bylaws. National bylaws. One second. I'm on LPDA pulling them up, and I will put them on the screen. Because you guys, when you see this, even though it's difficult to explain, you're going to go, oh my God. Okay. Let me go here and see if I can share my screen. Yes. But why isn't it showing? I need to do a new scene. One second. Need to open up a new window here for you guys. Okay, now I need to share my screen. Okay, national bylaws. Let me figure out how to scroll this down here. I lost my mouse. You know, that happens when you have multiple screens. Where'd my mouse go? Okay, here it is. It was on the third screen. Okay, so let's scroll down. Statement of principles. So, right here it says in Article 3, Section 1, the statement of principles, it may only be amended by a vote of 7/8 of all registered delegates at a convention. Okay? Wonderful, right? Let's go now to the section on amending the bylaws. I think right here. These bylaws may be amended by a 2/3 vote of the delegates. Fine. Article 2, it goes back and refers to what we just read. Article 3, Section 1, shall not be amended by a vote of less than 7/8 of all registered delegates at convention. So basically what they did is Article 3 says the statement of principles cannot be amended by less than a 7/8. Then in the amendment section, they said, and that article cannot be amended by less than a 7/8. It was protecting itself. Are you following me? But here's where the rat fuckery comes into place. These people said, but it doesn't say that Article 17, Section 2 has to be amended by 7/8. So we can amend Article 17, Section 2 by 2/3, which protects Section 3, Article 3, then go back and edit Article 3 to 2/3, and now the statement of principles is a happy hunting ground. And they had the nerve to say they thought this alleged back door was potentially deliberately left in. You saw how strongly D. Frank Robinson worded what they were doing in 72 and 74. You think anyone believes that was left open like that, allegedly, because I deny that there was, in fact, a back door. But do you think anywhere that anyone was doing that on purpose? I'm trying to now. Let me go back. I didn't pull my chat back up. So let's go back to where we were. And then I can pull my chat back up, because I wanted to see if any of you guys... I don't want to share a screen anymore. Well, you'll have to just deal with that in the background. Give me 1 second so I can pull the chat back up. So that is some sneaky, sneaky moves. I hope you agree. Oh, I see what I did. Okay, that's Safari. I think I still do have the chat up on Chrome. I do. See, Christian? See? You said, haha, wow. Isn't that some sneaky ass rat fuckery right there? Oh my God. But the delegates at that convention agreed that there really wasn't a back door. And if there was, they didn't say this is now me speaking, it wasn't deliberate. It was because the people in 1972 weren't parliamentarian sneaky sneaks. It was obvious what they were trying to do. And just because, they weren't snakes to think of every little sneaky move that could be made, you exploit that? No. And ever since 2008, the same group of people were planning on trying it again because they were convinced there was a back door. Now, enter me. I'm going to describe to you what I think was the most important thing I've ever done for this party, and will remain the most important thing I will ever have done for this party. I was on the bylaws committee in 2018, and I put forth a proposal to close the alleged back door, and it got shot down by some of the same people who were on that committee that wanted to do this, who are behind what happened in 2008. But at that time, there was another proposal that he wasn't the chair at the time, but he was the chair of the bylaws committee, Joe Bishop Henchman, wanted to pass. And he knew that if I argued against it, it probably wouldn't. And I had told him I opposed his proposal because as long as there was an alleged backdoor, I would never agree to touch any part of the bylaws that even mentioned the statement of principles. But if the backdoor was closed, then no harm. So he agreed to support closing the back door if I would agree to support his proposal if the back door was closed, and I agreed. And he convinced the committee to go along with it, and we also moved the proposal up. Okay, so in 2018, I had a proposal to close the alleged back door. And this is one of the things that I done in 2018. So this was my proposal. Article 17, it was then, was amendment instead of 14. And I proposed to change Article 2 to say Article 3, Section 1, or this section. The key words is or this section shall not be amended. What I did was add what's called a force field, a circular protection, so that no one could ever again say that Article 17, Section 2 could be amended by a 2/3. That was my proposal. And this is the handouts that I made for the 2018 flyer, a convention. Those of you who were there may remember where I explained what was going on. Okay, let's go back there. And it passed. And that is what I consider to be the most important thing I will ever do for this party. But if I can pull something up, give me one moment. I didn't plan on doing this, but I think it's important. If you give me just 1 second. I am pulling up something in the background, if I can find it. Close the back door. Pink flame of liberty. You know, YouTube, whenever you search for something, that's how you know if they're suppressing your content. If you even, okay, here we go. I finally found it. Okay. Whoa, don't start yet.
Hi.
Woof. I don't know if you heard that. That was loud. I want to share this YouTube video. This is a clip from the convention. So you can hear who argued for who. You can see it happen. To me, this is absolutely historic. But I need to go to that scene. So give me 1 sec. Scenes. Let me move to that screen. Okay. So you should be seeing now. This is the 2018 convention. I will need to know. I don't want this chat up. I'm going to move this over. But because I need to see, I'm moving it to another screen. I need to be able to see if you guys are going to hear the sound. So let me go back to the video. And if you don't got the sound, let me know right away. Okay? This clip is 10 minutes long, so you're going to have a little patience. But you'll see what happened. And I think it's important. This is a critical part of our history.
I'm 1 for 2. I'm hoping for more. Proposal Q is on page 32 of the bylaws report, codify protection of statement of principles. Currently, to amend the statement of principles, it requires a 7/8 vote of registered delegates at the convention. The provision that sets that requirement is Article 17, Section 2, which itself does not require 7/8 vote to amend. This proposal would introduce that requirement for that provision as well as not affect the overall requirement to change the statement of principles. So what this would mean that it is possible now that you could amend the 7/8 requirement, and indeed that was a proposal submitted in committee but not forwarded to you to the floor. So what this would change is, in order to lower the threshold from 7/8, you would need 7/8 to do that. It was adopted 5-2 in committee and would take effect immediately. Oh, and if we could request the AV to put the screen, put proposal Q on the screen. It's on page 32.
Microphone 2. Do you rise to speak in favor or against?
In favor?
Is there anyone wishing to speak against?
Yes.
Microphone 3. He's farther up than you, Tom. Microphone 3.
I don't mind if he speaks first.
I'm going to recognize you anyways, Aaron.
That's fine. Thank you.
Aaron Starr from California, right?
Yes, thank you. So I've always had a problem with this area of our bylaws because think about it this way. We have roughly 800, just to keep the math simple, we have 800 registered delegates right now. To make any change at all requires 700 people to vote in favor. If you look around, now here's the problem with that, folks. The problem is if you look around, you don't have 700 people in the room. It should never be the situation where it takes more than 100% of the people to change anything, even if it's just a stylistic change. I know many years ago, back in the 90s, we tried to eliminate the wording cult from the statement of principles. There were people that had a problem with that. They thought that it made us sound like a cult ourselves, and we came very close to changing that on a number of occasions, but we could never get enough people in the room to do that, even though that was a very popular proposal to do so. Now, if you had 7/8 of people present, I can see that, or even 5/6. I mean, think about it this way. If you had 800 people registered, but you only had 600 people in the room, ask yourself, what number of people would be acceptable to you to make any sort of change? Now, to me, you can argue over what the number ought to be. I think it should be at least 500 out of 600. It should be really, really high. But right now, you have 600 people in the room. You need 700 votes to make a change. So anybody that's outside the room is treated as if they're a no. Anybody who doesn't vote at all, who's abstaining, is treated as a no. You never want to lock yourself into something where you can never, ever, 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 ever change it. And that's what we have today. So, you might as well make it 100%. Why not make it 100% instead of 7/8? Because that's really where you're at anyway. Because you cannot effectively change it. It's just an impossibility. No one's ever been able to do it. They've tried it for 30 years. It's never been done. It can never be done. So I would suggest don't lock it down even further where it's just impossible beyond impossible.
Point of inquiry?
Microphone 2 for a point of inquiry.
I would like Mr. Starr to explain then why they object to the change of numbers rather than making it registered delegates as opposed to people on the floor and coming up with a number.
No, that's in the nature of debate. That's not actually a point of information. I'm sorry. You can go ask him. He's over there. Microphone 2.
Thank you. Pat Dixon from Texas. I speak in favor of the proposal, and I understand the arguments by Aaron because I've actually made efforts to change a particular word in the statement of principle, which is cult. I don't like that word. But if I'm asked, should we do it the easy way, find some end run, I disagree. Our principles matter most. So the fact that we have 7/8 to change our statement of principles makes us unique. It's one of the reasons I love this party. That's what that's what matters most. It is not an impossibility. Yes, I realize it's hard. I've tried. But it is not an impossibility. And if we come to this convention in 2 years in Austin and say we want to change that word and you get 700 people, it'll be more than that, then that's how it should pass.
I'm going to recognize microphone 2 again. I believe Mr. Howe wishes to speak in opposition.
Yes, I speak in opposition. I'm Tom Howe from North Carolina. And while I have sympathy for Mr. Starr's objections, my objection is far simpler and strategic. This amendment, as given, is poor English. It uses the conjunction or with one side having a not in it. It should say if they want to be clear, it should say neither Article 3 nor this section shall be amended. As it's stated, it's unclear, the logic is poor. I urge you to vote it down in order to allow amendments to be made to it.
Microphone number 1.
I thank you very much. It's Karen Ann Harlos from Colorado. I speak very strongly in favor of this proposal. I'm one of the people who is very much in favor of it, and I actually disagree that it doesn't now have the 7/8. I don't think there's anyone in this room who doubts that was the intent when this was written, that everything was supposed to be protected by 7/8. And what they weren't able to anticipate was people looking for loopholes and looking for backdoors, just because they weren't as parliamentary sophisticated as we are today with the games that we play with our principles. It is completely against the intent of our founders, and all of us joined this party knowing exactly what that said. I did not join this party and give hundreds of hours to this party and thousands of dollars to this party, only to have people try to find a back door in it. To me, that is fraud and trying to find a loophole. Whoever is opposed to it joined this party with that same document in place too. Now, one other thing I'd like to close with here, well, actually two. It's not impossible. Let me tell you something. If I wanted to do it, I'd get it done. It ain't impossible. One last thing. I'd like to add one last thing that is from our bylaws. The Statement of Principles affirms that philosophy upon which the LP is founded, by which it shall be sustained, and through which liberty shall prevail. The enduring importance of the Statement of Principles requires that it be amended only by a 7/8 vote of all registered delegates at convention. There is no one who could read that honestly to say that they meant to put a frickin' back door in the back there. Let's close that to stop these stupid games.
If you're at a microphone wishing to speak in opposition, please raise your hand so I can see you. Microphone 3.
Mr. Chairman, this is Guy McLendon. Since 1980, I have had a copy of the Statement of Principles on the wall in my home. So I truly love the Statement of Principles as it is. However, that word registered truly does mean it's numerically not possible to make a change. Now, the founders of our nation talked about the dead hand of the past. I do not believe that this convention should tie the hands of every future LP convention. I urge you to vote no, to vote this down so that we can remove that one word, registered, so that it does indeed take 7/8 of the seated delegates in order to make a change.
Microphone 2.
Christopher Gill, Ohio. I called a question.
Is there any objection to closing debate? Objection. All in favor of closing debate, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. We'll have no further debate. All in favor of the proposal, please stand up. You may sit down. All opposed, please stand up. It's just about 2/3. The motion passes.
Okay, let me figure out how to close this. Give me 1 second. Stop. Stop. 1 second here. I'm not always so good with switching my scenes. Option windows. Nope, that's not it. Options, windows, scenes. Give me, and y'all can see now your comments. Yay. Okay, this should do it here. Okay, back here. This is where I want to be. All right. So there you've got a complete story of the statement of principles going on. I think maybe you understand now why I said I think that's the most important thing I have done for the party and that I will ever do. Turned on the rocket boosters for that one. So I think, and I don't know if you guys are seeing a delay, but I'm kind of seeing a delay on my end, and hopefully you're not. So let's now continue here. All right. I'm not going to do this today, but we might do a special episode. You guys will have to tell me if you're interested. But one thing I want to leave with here is the platform. You'll often have people who will say, yeah, we must believe in a government because the platform mentions a government. They misunderstand the purpose of our platform. If you take a look, and I'm going to read from memory because I don't want to take time to pull it up. But our platform starts with a preamble, and the preamble has a final sentence. And it goes, this is a paraphrase, though it might be exact. The policies and the planks that follow are not our goal. Our goal is nothing less than a world set free in our lifetime. And what this means is that the platform planks are transitory. They're meant to deal with situations we have now. They're not the goal. The goal is the statement of principles. So pointing to a platform plank that mentions the government completely misunderstands the purpose of the platform. Of course it mentions the government because the government presently exists. No platform plank is our goal, necessarily. Some of them might be. But the only thing you could hold up as our goal is the statement of principles. And that's critically important. And if you notice, though we're not going to do this today, when I do this presentation, I had the case study thing next with taxation is theft. Because you'll have a lot of people claim that our platform does not state that taxation is theft. Again, that's never the question because the platform's transitory. But in fact, our platform does say it. It says it by way of the statement of principles. And it's really interesting if you follow the line. So I think I will do that with you guys to show you what I'm talking about on the proper use of the platform and the statement of principle, using as an example the premise taxation is theft. And it would follow with a lot of other premises. So I think that's all I have for you guys tonight. And I hope I've given you a newfound appreciation for the statement of principles and my particular passion for it and why, and the dedication that I've had. So, yeah, I think I've done my duty, and that is will be my place. Hopefully, when the party, if we haven't yet changed the world so that we are no longer needed, that 30 years from now or whenever, there'll be another historian like me telling a whole new group of people about the crazy pink-haired chick who protected the party in 2018 to make it so that we would not lose our principles. So I hope you guys will indulge me in my little outro. because again, this is what us YouTubers need to do, and I will see you guys soon. So here we go. Please, here I give you the spiel. Like, subscribe, and share. This is an important episode, and it will really help. Also, if you can, I understand we are all going through hard times, but for as little as $1 a month, you can support my work. The more time I can do this, the more effective I can be. And that's a scary thought to some people, right? You don't want me to be more effective, some of them out there. And also in the show notes, there are other ways you can help. You can mail me a ham like Tom Arnold did. Yes, he did. He actually did mail me a ham. And there's an Amazon affiliate link in which you can help financially support me without it costing you anything. And my patrons, we are going through right now a book review or book discussion of Judge Gray's book, All Rise. We are on chapter 2, which I need to record tonight. Today has been a day of recording. So if you would like to encourage me, and you can, please consider becoming a patron. It would mean a great deal to me. All right, everyone, have an awesome night, and I hope I inspired and encouraged you today. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business. Not